Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings, Better Being. Thank you for tuning in to the Be a Better Being podcast. I'm Michelle Zellner, your host, and I am joined by two beauties today, one of them being my fabulous co-host, Sasha. How's it going, girlfriend?
Hello. It's going. Glad you're here. Glad you're back.
Yes, and actually we are wrapping up Love Month, or Matters of the Heart, as I have themed it. So I'm donning a little bit of red again, just to honor this month. And we are joined by somebody I have dubbed the Love Lady, because that's what we're talking about. Welcome, Marie Adell. How are you today?
I am so good. I'm so happy to be here with all of you.
Well, we are happy as well. We're going to have a really great conversation about love in all its forms, why we need it, why we need to give it, why we might have a hard time giving it and receiving it. And this is something that is really in your wheelhouse. So let's do a little bit of background. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then I think Sasha and I have a ton of questions. So
Yeah. So again, Maria Adell, and I am a human designed family practitioner, is what I have coined myself. And like my past history that has gotten me to this point, so to speak, is a full history of teaching. So over 20 years as a teacher and very specific study as far as like what I'm doing in teaching that gave me the experience to understand neuroscience, that gave me the background of psychology. I work with children with special needs, understand the science of reading, understand the science of early childhood and how the brain grows and develops. And of course, that entails love. Oh,
it was really that very diverse background that drew me to you, that I really believe you're a perfect person to talk about this, because I really do want to dive into the science of love, like why we as human beings need it, and how we do evolve into these spaces where perhaps we are not open to receiving it, or we are not willing to give it, or and a lot of times we don't even know that we are or aren't doing that, or we don't know why. But I think also just your history with teaching and working with people of all ages. I'm sure you've seen so much that's given you a lot of experience to talk about this. Sasha, I know this is definitely going to be a conversation you are going to be jumping in on. Anything right off the bat that you have that's kind of tickling your brain?
I have questions. But my questions, I'll shoot them all after you're done with mine. Come from special needs. My questions come from like drug use, or so just all of that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, like she said, the importance of love? Why do we need it?
yeah. So, I mean, there's the esoteric and then there's the, chemical physical response that we have in our body. And from the moment that, we come into existence and really start to have our senses be come into play even when we're in the womb, right? Like because we can hear things, we can feel things, all the time while we're, growing inside of our mothers up, like it starts at a certain point, but from the moment that we come out, like it's stimulus response, right? And in order to be able to grow, like it's scientifically proven that we are hardwired for connection as human beings, and we need to have physical contact. We need to have people around us that are taking care of our needs. And so this manifests itself as a form of love for us. Like we view that connection, that loving connection with someone else, someone taking care of us, someone, that's going to be there for us no matter what. And like we're programmed to cry, we're programmed to smile, we're programmed to, do all of those things to get the attention that we need to be able to get, so that we get that physical touch, so that we get that connection, so that our, synapses and, dendrites, they connect with each other, they form a neuron, which is, comes into a play when we are thinking. And it's all like this grand chemical design to be able to get what we need first when we come into life. And then that feeling of that we identify as love as human beings is that it's showing how we care about another person, how we're able to give love, right? How we're able to give those things that other people need, and how we're able to receive those same things. And it's up to our experiences that we've had in our childhood as to how easily that we're able to really do that.
So what I heard is that we are literally born out of a need for survival, right? The reactions and emotions that we put out there are because of a need for survival. Somebody literally has to take care of me because I just came out of the womb. So I have to express that need. So it really is out of that need for survival. And I would imagine whether or not we got those needs met and in what way they were met is going to shape a whole bunch for our future ability to give and receive love. Is that sort of an accurate summary?
Yeah, it definitely does. And at the same time, like, there's hope, right? It's not cemented in stone. Science is really also showing that, there's a science called epigenetics, and that, really delves into our genetic material and like the very DNA that we have. And yes, it, can come from our familial DNA. It comes from, if we couple of generations back, like, there was struggle, that's imprinted in our DNA, where people are like, I have anxiety, my mom had anxiety, my grandma had anxiety, all of those things. It's programmed in our DNA as a response to stress. And at the same time, we can learn how to gain tools that will help us to be able to calm our systems and literally rewrite our DNA. We are not doomed to be what we were brought up to be, or doomed to what our family was. And at the same time, it can be the inverse. Like, if we had an awesome family growing up, and like we have lots of, success, quote unquote, success stories in our, our epigenetics as well too. Like, that can express itself, that entrepreneurial streak, that, whatever. It's like, oh, your grandma was that way, that kind of a thing. So all of that to say that we're it's not a be all end all. Like, even though we may not have received what we needed to have in childhood, it does not mean that we do not have the ability to be able to change and shift that literally in our very DNA.
What do you feel like in today's society are some of the most damaging things on love?
Hmm. So I'm going to kind of go with an esoteric response on that because I feel like everything in general serves us in one way. It helps us, right? And it can limit us or hinder us in another way. And so it's really truly our perceptions on things. And, as a society, I choose to take the more hopeful stance that we are moving in the direction of something greater and bigger than where we've been. Like, it's going to be less of a, massive masculine energy of like, do what I say, really, having the people underneath of their thumbs. And there's more and more people that are getting into that space of really heart opening, really, wanting to change the planet in a collective conscious growth minded kind of a way, and that feminine energy is, really coming into play even more now. And so there's always going to be challenges in life, with love as well too. And at the same time, when we shift our perspectives, just even the perspective of that we all are here to play a role, and it's a catalyzing role. And so, if we grew up in a family that was abusive, that was a catalyzing role for us to do something. Like that's my family experience. That's what I grew up in. And I decided to do something different. I've shifted that because that is not in my realm of desire for a future moving forward for myself, for my child. And so I am actively changing my family DNA by doing that. So we can blame and point a finger and say, like, this is the problem. Or we can literally change ourselves, which then sends that ripple out into the world.
For people who are struggling with love, giving, receiving, what would be your number 1 or 2 tools that you would suggest that they dive into?
Yeah. So, really learning about themselves, because I think a lot of times that we really put blinders on. Like, we would prefer to stay in our known pain than to try and go into some other kind of unknown, or maybe we are afraid that we're going to repeat the same experiences again. And so it's scary to change. It's scary to look at something different. So it begins within. It really does. And that can be comforting. And it can also be frustrating at the same time, because it's like, well, where do I even start? Right. And, Shakespeare to, know thyself to be true, or whatever the Hamlet quote is. I'm sure that's not to thine own self be true, or whatever. So we need to figure out who we are first in order to be able to have that ripple out and affect anything. And the more that we're able to look within and understand ourselves, it helps us to have a different perspective on humanity and on what's going on from another person. So everything starts with that shift in stories within us.
So this reminds me a little bit about some of the conversation I had with Benny Nuzzo a few weeks ago, where he talked about his dad not ever showing love and understanding that his dad didn't receive love from his grandpa. And because of maybe not getting what he needed as a kid, that kind of drove Vinny into certain behaviors, right? To get that attention, to kind of do that screaming and crying in that, teenage and adult way version of it, which really led him to addiction. And, again, going backwards, that was a big thing about his father, who was a heroin addict. Going backwards, his father's father was very abusive to his father and his grandmother. And so I think going backwards and looking at it, not to point the finger, but to say, okay, this is why. There is a reason. Let's actually acknowledge what that reason is. And then let me look inward
Yeah.
and decide that I get to make a different choice, or I get to learn something different. What I find is a lot of people don't want to go in because it is yucky and scary and messy. And sometimes they think it's shameful or embarrassing or whatever, right? And yet I totally agree with you that unless and until you do that piece of it, very little else is going to change. So when it comes to that looking inward, how do you encourage somebody to actually do that hard work?
Yeah. I mean, you are not able to prod them, right? Like, when do you ever really want to do anything just because somebody says to do it, right? Like, as far as something that's scary, unless it's fear based, like unless they're like holding a gun to your head basically, for that. And it doesn't work to just like tell someone to do the thing, because if that worked, then, all of our significant others would just do everything that we needed them to do, right? So, it all goes back to that connection. to that hardwired need that we have to connect with other people. Like there's a legitimate fear that's there that is preventing people from moving into that next step. And to be able to, you know, share stories or ask like questions rather than tell. And, people need to come there in their own time. And maybe they leave this planet never ever wanting to ask the question, how? That's their journey this time round. So it's just, a matter of when they're ready. It's very, Karate Kid. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? And so all we can do as practitioners is to continue to put out the word, and whomever it reaches, whomever it touches is the individual that's meant to hear that message. And they're meant to say like, yeah, like I'm ready to look within. Like I think of a particular person in my family who, you know, wants to continually look backward and blame everything on the past and not acknowledge where they're at here in the future. And at the same time, they didn't get that connection that they needed to get. And so continue to act like the toddler and have tantrums at 70 years of age without seeing like why. But it is that connection piece. And so when you've built up that callus against connection, so to speak, it can be really difficult to slough that off. And it takes a lot of courage to look at that, to do that. And so the people that are the ones that, are ready for this journey, that are like, "Hey, yeah, I'm ready to, to be vulnerable again. I'm ready to try to connect with people like I'm put on this planet to do." Like that can be so scary because it just feels like sometimes like over and over and over again. But a lot of times that comes from you're trying to be someone that you're not. You're trying to be what everyone else wants you to be or what you think that they want you to be, instead of simply being yourself and saying, "Hey, this is me. My community, my tribe will find me."
I have a question for you. I have had this conversation with my deep thinker friends, and I love this just because there's no right or wrong answer. Like genuinely, what do you think is the opposite of love?
So I feel like that there are only two emotions. It's love and fear. And so, we come from either that, and to me, love, like here on this human plane, it's a chemical experience. All of our emotions are, right? Like we, have a thought and it makes a chemical in our brain, and then like there's an instant response to that, and there's an emotion that comes from that gets embedded in our bodies like physically, it's in our brain emotionally, it etches a pattern in there, all of the things. There's that kind of love. And then there's the kind of love that it's so hard to even fathom in this human form, as to how much that we're loved and how much the universe loves us. And the opposite of that, I feel like, is that fear, because every anger, every jealousy, every anxiety, every bitterness, the underlying is, I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not, like all of those things. And so the person that is angry needs to be loved the most.
Yeah. So most of my conversations always end up with fear being the answer as well. A lot of people might say hatred would be the opposite of love, but I strongly believe that it is fear, just like you had mentioned. Do you mind going in for those that don't understand? So I love psychology and I love neuroscience. For those that heard you say, dendrite and chemical, do you mind just what chemicals and what is a dendrite? Where is that? Is that in my stomach? Where is it located? How does it help me sleep? How does it help me grow? Just give us a little quick review on, what is it that you're speaking of when you say all these things?
Yeah, I was trying to leave like most of the science talk out of it. At the same time, it just creeps in because it's like part of me.
Important. It's important to educate at the same time as, try to stay relevant. Well, to be relevant, you also have to educate. So go at it.
Yeah. So in our brain, we have a lot of chemicals. And actually, in our gut, we have a lot of chemicals too. So, the chemicals in our gut talk to the chemicals in our brain. The nutrition, what we eat, speaks to our gut as well too. So our gut health is incredibly important because like most of the serotonin, which is our feel good hormone that we have, is in our gut. And so if we're not getting proper nutrition, and like a perfect example of that is me, when I was young, I was on a lot of antibiotics for ear infections. And so, people didn't know about things like having a good gut biome and, replacing your gut biome while you're on the antibiotics and after, with a good, strong, something that will like take your gut biome and replace like what is taken out because the antibiotic kills both the good and bad bacteria in there. So we need things to replace that, whether it's, with food or it's with, a pill that is, and all of a sudden, like the word is just like going away from me. What is the
I
word for
think
that?
you're looking for probiotic.
Probiotic, yes. So we need prebiotics and we need probiotics in our gut. And, there's a lot of different foods that can help with that. But again, also like you take a probiotic that has like that extra strength in there that just helps. So it really starts, and there's a nerve that travels all the way through our body into multiple places, and that affects the chemicals that are carried from our gut up to our brain. So, if that isn't operating at full function, then, that system's out of whack. So there's like so many sensitivities, a lot of different things that come into play here. So we are trying to get our feel good hormones to be running smoothly through our system, and that's like the Chinese way of saying chi or energy, those pressure points that we have, the meridians that we have in our body, like how we're divided up, the different pressure points, the different systems in human design. We talk a lot about chakras, and if you were to look under, and put someone through like an MRI or whatever, you would be able to see those nerve bundles that correspond with our chakras. And so all that to say, like, healthy body, healthy system, healthy brain, and our chemicals are working the way that they need to in our brain. And a synapse and a dendrite are just two little magnets that, when we have a thought, like a strong emotion that creates that chemical response, they're like zzz, like magnets come together and they form a neuron, and that neuron is our thought. And we build up so many neurons. So, like, if I'm constantly saying, I can't find love, I'm looking for love, I don't know where love is, that's the super highway that's being built in your, brain around your life. That's the life story. So it really is true. You can't find love. You don't know where it is. Like all of those things, because that's the belief system that's chemically being built. And on the opposite side, if we're moving in the direction of what we do desire instead, because we can only hold so many thoughts in our brain at one time. There's like a little gateway bouncer in the back of our brain that's like, nope, that thought is cut off. Like you only have so many in there. So we actively need to be able to reprogram our subconscious, for lack of a better way to say it, to really move in the direction that we desire. But a lot of that comes from that strong emotional response that creates that chemical in our body. So the chemical is the same. It's just the way that you use it. Like it activates in the same part of the brain, whether you're angry or whether you're happy. It's an emotion. It comes into play in your brain in that same way. You assign meaning to it based on your experiences that you've had in life. So you get to choose what meaning that you assign, and you get to look at your beliefs and see how you can shift them if they're not serving you any longer.
So I want to come back around to love in the various forms. I think one of the maybe challenges we as humans have is we all define love and how love looks and what love looks like in different ways. So, when I see maybe a mom disciplining her child in a appropriate way, I think that's love,
Mhm,
right? Somebody else might think, well, you're mean.
mhm.
So, let's talk about how love can look so many different ways. And like to your point, it's how we as individuals are defining it. And what would be maybe a really healthy picture of love?
Yeah, I mean, we carry a vibration as human beings, and, when you look under a microscope at that vibration, they've done like where they've whispered words into ice and then looked at like what the ice has done. And you can see like if words are whispered that are mean, then, the molecules form in a way that is like, and a plant, like, if you talk to a plant mean, the plant will die, like, it will literally die. And then on the converse side of that, if you sing to a plant or if you, whisper words into the ice that are the water stays clear and, like, it's not foggy and cloudy and gross. Yeah, go ahead.
I just need to say something really quick about the plant thing. Cause I know some people are like, oh my God, this woman is nuts. My mom used to have a plant business. It was called the Green Thumb.
Yeah.
And when I was young, I would go to the plant parties with her. And she would say, talk to your plants, touch your plants. Your plants love to be touched, and talk to them and appreciate their beauty and nurture them just like you would any other living thing. And even all the women in the plant party be like, oh my God, this lady's crazy, telling us to love and talk and touch our plants.
Yeah.
It's true. So anybody out there who thinks this is a little woo woo, it's all true. So, okay, I just had to jump in on that. Go ahead, Marie.
No, I mean it truly is. It's like an acid and a base, in science, like a chemical. It's the same thing. Our words carry a vibration. They carry a frequency to them. You're able to literally see that frequency when you look at it through that scientific lens. And to your point, like I had this lily plant that people were like, "Oh my God, like I've never seen a lily plant that big." It was ginormous. I called it Seymour because like when you would sit in the chair and it was behind you, it would like tap on your shoulder sometimes, like the little shop of horrors. But it was, yeah, I mean, it was huge. But I would talk to it, I would sing to it, I would feed it, like, all of the things, and just really, the love in your home, right? So in that vibration, we all can carry any of those kinds of vibrations. We can carry the feelings of jealousy and fear and despair and stay in that kind of lower vibration, and it's not a judgment because sometimes that's where we are, right? Or we can move towards those higher frequency emotions of love and joy and peace, and actively help our systems to be able to move in that direction. And so as we're seeking that higher frequency, those higher vibrations, we are going to be moving into something that makes us feel better. And anything that makes us feel better is that love frequency. And, who's to say what it is for one person or another person? That's we're all made, divinely different. And, whatever makes us feel good, like who's to say that, the person next to us would agree with the same thing. And we get to figure that out for ourselves, and sometimes we misconstrue like love and another emotion, right? Like they can be two sides of the same coin. And so like, I can love bananas. I say I love bananas, like really, really like them. And some people are like, I hate bananas, right? Like different things evoke different imagery. So we just get to choose what feels good for us. And it's not really up to anyone else to tell us what love is. It's up to us to do the work inward and discover what that feels like for us.
I would imagine most people listening, I know for sure Sasha, Marie, probably you, definitely me. We've been in situations already in our lives where we have said the words, well, fill in the blank, he, she, whatever, must not have loved me or doesn't love me, or they wouldn't have done fill in the blank. I know definitely when I was, going through my rough patch in the marriage slash divorce, the behaviors of my husband at the end were 180-degree opposite of the behaviors of him in the beginning. So in my mind, you must not have either one is fake, right? One is not real. Either the beginning was not real or the end is not real. Well, I'm living this end right now, so I know this is real. So you must never have loved me.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably something most people have said at some point, and where I finally got to through my own healing journey was to acknowledge that he loved me in the best way that he knew how.
Mhm.
It might not have been what I needed or what I wanted or what I was looking for, but it was the best he could do at
Yeah.
that time or at this time. So, when it comes to like intimate love, relationships, and I think one of the reasons people don't want to raise their frequency is because then you are vulnerable, right? And that's scary because you might be rejected, you might be let down, it might not be reciprocated the way you want it to. And so I am much safer if I just don't do it, right?
Yeah.
So again, the fear is preventing that. Would you say that is across the board, whether it's, opening up to wanting to be authentic with a friend, or it's maybe, a romantic relationship, or it's with a parent or a child or a sibling? Is it basically the same, the walls that we put up and maybe the reasons that we feel a certain way if we feel like we didn't get the love that we needed? Is it the same no matter really what the relationship or the nature of the relationship is?
Yeah, I mean, we're, we all have our own perception. We have our own perception of, what an event or a circumstance or a situation looks like. And I can totally relate to you. Like, I had an end of a marriage as well too. And, I had someone very close to me say, well, you truly know who that person is, and in times of, stress, like the true person comes out. So that must really be him, right? And I learned something a long time ago, that when people know better, they do better. Like, we don't actively seek to destroy and hurt another. I really don't feel that. And at the same time, can we go back into that 2-year-old, 3-year-old brain of like, my needs are not being met right now. Fire, 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 fight, flight, freeze, those caveman instincts that we have that are built within us to keep us safe. Only our system doesn't know that the bear isn't chasing us. It just knows that we feel like, you know, yeah, whatever. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear or not. It was gonna come out, but it almost did. It didn't. So we just know we feel terrible, right? Like, we know we feel terrible around that. And so, being able to see that person, that they're truly in pain, actually, and to have that empathy as the collective, because we're all, I know this is going to sound like very esoteric as well too. It really is the truth though. Like, if you listen to it and you allow it to absorb into you and you feel that frequency, we are all one, literally. And the thing that we blame on the other person is something within us that we do not like about ourselves. And so to be able to look within and have the courage to look at that. So we as human beings, we put that measure on it, and we agree as a society. And at the same time, there are people that, when there's an act of violation, that can completely forgive in the moment as if it never even happened. So we get to choose. It's like a boundary. It's a limitation that we place on ourselves as to how we can forgive or how we can receive or how we can give. And so, coming back to that idea of does it look is it the same? Like I feel like it is. It's just same side, the difference, same side of the different side of a same coin. The love and the fear. It's the same thing. We can find love and fear in every situation.
We have a sign in our front yard that says love can. Giant sign, probably 5 feet or 3 feet, whatever it is, gigantic board out in our front yard that says love can. When we first moved into our home in 2019, we had put our relaxed pools information on the front of that. And our neighbor who faces us called the city on us. And they sent out this lovely guy named Jerry. And Jerry came out and tapped on my door and he said, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to remove your sign from the front. And I said, Jerry, come on in. Like, come in. Can I offer you some water? Well, I found things out about Jerry. He loves cats. He loves his job, all this stuff. And I finally I said, Jerry, if I don't remove the sign, what happens? And he says, well, you could potentially go to jail. You could have a fine. You could do all these things. And I said, okay, well, I don't really want to take the sign down. Can you tell me what are the limitations? Like, what can I put up and what can't I put up? And he says, well, you can't promote your business. And I said, that's fine. I don't need to promote my business. And I said, what can I put on there? He says, well, anything other than promoting a business would be considered art. And art, as we all know, is defined by each individual's perspective. So I decided that we would put love can on the front of this board so that every single day that my beautiful and lovely neighbor looks out their window, I can remind them that love can, because love can change this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on that note, before we officially wrap up, because love is hard, right? It doesn't seem like it should be, and yet it is. Sometimes it is hard to love somebody who you don't agree with, you don't feel like they treat you the right way. It might be hard to receive love from somebody because maybe you don't feel like you deserve it, or you don't really want it from that person. So in general, okay, we know there is a human need for love. Yes, it's esoteric, but it is rooted in science. It is something the human species, as almost every other living species, not all of them, some really don't need it, but a lot of the ones that we care about, right? I know my animals, when I'm gone for too long, I know they're not doing well. Even though I have cat sitters come in, it's not the same, right? Plants, if we want them to grow beautiful and thrive, we have to nurture them. So there is science to love. There's the emotion of love. How do you help somebody, no matter who it is? Maybe it's a mother and a child. Maybe it's two people in an intimate relationship. Maybe it's a friendship. Maybe it's your neighbor that you really aren't super jazzed on. Maybe one or two things to help that person either be more willing and open to giving and or receiving love. What are some steps?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like the number one thing is like your perception of the situation. Like, really, I say perception is 9/10 of the law. Like, I use that because it really is like our perception that someone else is mean or miserable or, whatever. And they might actually be. And at the same time, like, if we want to, tame a curmudgeonly neighbor, we could reach out with an olive branch, like, put a plate of cookies on their porch or, pay attention and see what it is that they actually need. Maybe they don't have anybody around anymore. And so that there's never any human contact. And when you don't have human contact, like if I'm for a day in front of my computer, oh my gosh, like I can physically feel like that distress in my body. Like I have to get up and move, and all of the things. So if there's that, when we approach a conversation with a loved one who feels like they're immovable in that thing, do the work within first and approach with the intent to understand instead of the intent to be on the defense. Because when we show our vulnerability, then other people are also thinking it's okay for me to do the same thing.
I think those are great messages. I also try to teach people come from a point of curiosity rather than judgment. And judgment is normal, right? That again, it's rooted in our survival. So all these things that we're talking about, why we have difficulty with it, or the reactions we have, the perceptions we have, you're not a bad person for having them. You're totally normal.
Yeah,
Right?
it's human.
Yeah, exactly. It's about determining if it's helpful and if it's necessary. And if it's not helpful or necessary, then you get to do something different. So I read about this in my book, but the thing that really post divorce really irritated me was my dreams. Because I could block him out in my waking hours, but he infested my dreams, literally. And I would wake up angry, like, leave me alone. And I went and saw a psychic. We talked about this. And she said, whenever you have anything, in a dream, the minute you wake up, you light it with love and you send it on its way.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is the dumbest thing ever. He doesn't deserve my love. I don't want to give him love, right? I mean, the whole 9 yards. And then I was like, all right, let me just do this. And so literally I would do this little heart with my hands, like think about it, make the heart motion, take a deep breath and like blow it away. And I just kept doing it and doing it because the energy you put out is the energy you get back. And that to me was like my very real life lesson experience of how that actually works, which is why I know it works because I did it and it completely shifted everything. He no longer infests my dreams, has not for many, many years. And, that's because I have chosen to do my own inner work and then look at it from a different perspective. And it's hard. That's always the thing, right? And yet it was really the thing that was stifling my own joy. My own health and happiness was being stifled because of this anger that I was hanging on to and projecting back out, even though we had not even spoken in years and years and years, right? But he was still in my life and I didn't want him there. And so it really was that real life experience for me that shifted how that power of the mind and perception works and the energy transfer and how all of that really, it's a real thing. So anybody out there who isn't a full believer, I don't know, maybe this will help you believe. Sasha, any final thoughts, questions before we officially sign off?
And that's pretty powerful stuff. It's also confirming. It's a lot of the conversations that I've been having recently. I really encourage all of you to look into the stuff that Marie was speaking of. Get to know yourself, have frank conversations with yourself. It's okay to feel feelings. It's okay to love. It's okay to be afraid. Learn how to feel those feelings and do your best to take it upon yourself to just simply become a better being.
I love it. Marie, thank you so much. We'll have all the notes and how to get in touch with you in the show notes. And I'm going to close off by saying we have to love ourselves. And this is one thing that most people don't. You don't love yourself enough to do the hard work. Doing that hard work is an act of love. It's love towards yourself. And once you have a deeper understanding of you, why you are the way you are, why you do what you do, why you're afraid of what you're afraid of, why you think what you think, that will make every other aspect of your life so much easier, so much more enjoyable. And it's only going to help literally everybody else that you come across as well. So this has been a great way to wrap up the Matters of the Heart month. I appreciate you coming on, Marie. Thank you so much. And everybody, as you know, like Sasha said, you now get to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.